Most people have no idea their grocery bill is about to jump again. Not because of one big headline, not because of one crisis. It's quieter than that. It's happening item by item, aisle by aisle. And by the time it shows up on the receipt, it's already too late to plan ahead. I started noticing it a few months ago. Small things. A jar that used to cost one price, now costing more. A shelf that used to be full, now half empty on a Tuesday morning. Nobody is talking about this the way they should be. Not on the news, not in the store. You have to piece it together yourself. So I did. I went through the pricing data, the supply reports, the industry chatter. And I found 15 items that are quietly about to get more expensive or harder to find in the coming months. Some of these will surprise you. One of them, somewhere between number 4 and number 8, is the one that shocked me the most. You won't believe number 6. Stick with me through this list. By the end, you'll know exactly what to grab now, what to stock up on, and how to stay ahead of the curve while everyone else is caught off guard. And if this is the kind of thing you want to know before it happens, not after, go ahead and subscribe. This channel is built for people who like being one step ahead. Let's get into it. Item number 1, coffee. This one hits close to home for a lot of us. Coffee isn't just a grocery item, it's a morning ritual. Coffee prices have been climbing for a while now, and the reason isn't really about the store. It's about the weather thousands of miles away. Brazil and Vietnam grow most of the world's coffee, and both countries have had rough growing seasons back to back. Less rain, more heat, smaller harvests. Industry reports have been flagging tighter global coffee supply for months, and roasters have already been adjusting their pricing to match. This isn't a rumor. It's been building slowly, the way real shortages usually do. When I checked my usual bag of coffee last month, it was noticeably more than it was at the start of the year. Same brand, same size, different price tag. I almost didn't notice because it crept up in small steps instead of one big jump. If you drink coffee daily, this adds up fast over a year. Buying a few extra bags now, especially if you can catch a sale, is a simple way to soften the hit. Whole bean tends to stay fresher longer in the freezer if you want to stretch it out. This is one of those items where a small habit becomes a real budget line. You don't want to be caught paying double for your morning cup without ever seeing it coming. Item number 2, chocolate and cocoa products. If coffee is the ritual, chocolate might be the treat, and this one has been rough for a couple of years now. Cocoa prices spiked dramatically because of poor harvests in West Africa, where most of the world's cocoa is grown. Aging trees, disease, and unpredictable weather have all been part of the story. That cost doesn't stay with the farmers. It moves down the chain, straight to the candy aisle. Several major chocolate brands have already responded with smaller bars at the same price, or the same size at a higher price. Either way, you're paying more per bite than you used to. I noticed this myself around the holidays. A bag of chocolate I buy every year for a gift basket cost noticeably more, and honestly felt lighter in my hand. I checked the weight on the package out of curiosity, and sure enough, it had shrunk. If chocolate is a regular purchase for you, baking chips, cocoa powder, or bars, it's worth stocking up when you see a sale rather than waiting. This is one of those categories that isn't going back down anytime soon. Nobody wants to feel like dessert is suddenly a luxury item, but that's where this is heading if the trend keeps going. Item number 3, beef and ground. Beef. This is a big one, and it affects almost every household differently. The US cattle herd has been shrinking for years, hitting some of the lowest numbers in decades. Drought conditions across cattle country made it harder and more expensive for ranchers to keep herds fed. So many sold off cows instead of expanding. Fewer cattle now means less beef later. That's basic supply and demand, but it takes time to show up on shelves because cattle aren't grown overnight. I talked to someone who works in food distribution a while back, and they mentioned that beef pricing has been one of the most consistent upward trends they've tracked. Not a spike, just a steady climb that doesn't seem to be slowing down. If your family eats a lot of beef, ground beef especially, this is a good one to buy in bulk when it's on sale and freeze in portioned bags. Vacuum sealing helps it last even longer without freezer burn. This is the kind of item where planning ahead actually protects your weekly budget instead of just delaying the pain. Item number 4. Orange juice. Here's one that a lot of people don't connect to a bigger story, but it's a strong example of how a single crop problem changes an entire product category. Florida's citrus industry has been dealing with citrus greening disease for years, a bacterial infection that slowly kills orange trees. Combined with hurricane damage to groves, Florida's orange production has dropped dramatically compared to where it used to be. Most orange juice on shelves either comes from a shrinking domestic supply or gets blended with imported juice, which adds cost and complexity. Either way, the price reflects a crop that is genuinely struggling to recover. When I picked up my usual carton last month, the price had jumped enough that I actually paused in the aisle. I checked a couple of brands, and it wasn't just one company. It was across the board. If your family goes through orange juice regularly, frozen concentrate is worth a look. It's often cheaper per serving and stores well in the freezer for months. This one is a good reminder that a problem with a single crop hundreds of miles away ends up in your cart without any warning label. Item number 5. Olive oil. Olive oil has had one of the more dramatic price runs of any pantry staple in recent years, and the reasons trace back to drought across the Mediterranean. Spain produces a huge share of the world's olive oil, and repeated dry seasons have hurt yields significantly. When the biggest producer struggles, the ripple effect hits every bottle on the shelf, no matter the brand. Prices did ease slightly after a better harvest, but industry watchers note that supply is still tighter than it used to be, and any new weather problem could send prices climbing again fast. I remember grabbing my usual bottle and doing a double take at the price. I actually switched to a smaller bottle for a while just to soften the cost, which is something I never used to think twice about. If you use olive oil often, buying a larger bottle when prices dip and storing it in a cool, dark place helps you avoid getting caught during the next price swing. This is one of those ingredients that quietly touches almost every meal, so the impact adds up more than people expect. Item number 6. Vanilla extract. Here's the one I mentioned earlier. This might be the most overlooked item on this entire list, and it's the one that genuinely surprised me the most. Real vanilla comes primarily from Madagascar, and the crop is incredibly vulnerable to cyclones, political instability, and market speculation. A single bad storm season can send global vanilla prices soaring within months. Pure vanilla extract has, at various points, been more expensive per ounce than some premium goods, simply because the supply chain is so fragile and concentrated in one region of the world. I only found this out because I was baking and reached for my vanilla, and it was nearly empty. When I went to replace it, the price of the same small bottle had jumped enough that I actually went looking for imitation vanilla instead, something I never used to consider. If you bake regularly, this is worth stocking up on when you see a reasonable price, because pure vanilla extract doesn't spoil quickly and keeps well in a cool cabinet for a long time. This is exactly the kind of item nobody warns you about until you're standing in the baking aisle wondering what happened. Item number 7. Eggs. Eggs have become almost a symbol of grocery price swings over the last couple of years, and the story keeps repeating itself. Avian flu outbreaks have periodically wiped out large portions of egg-laying flocks across the country. Every time a major outbreak hits, prices spike within weeks because replacing a flock takes months, not days. Even between outbreaks, feed costs and packaging costs have kept baseline egg prices higher than they used to be just a few years ago. I've talked to people in my own life who started buying eggs in bulk from warehouse stores just to lock in a lower price before the next spike hits. It's become a pretty normal habit for budget-conscious shoppers now. Eggs freeze surprisingly well if you crack them out of the shell first, so if you see a good price, it's worth buying extra and freezing a batch in a sealed container for later use. This is one of those items where staying ahead of the news cycle on outbreaks can genuinely save you money before the shelves react. Item number 8. Butter doesn't get as much attention as eggs, but it's been on a similar roller coaster, and it's connected to dairy supply more broadly. Milk production costs have risen due to feed prices and herd sizes, and butter specifically has seen sharper swings, because demand often outpaces what dairies can produce during peak baking seasons. Retail data has shown butter prices climbing noticeably around major holidays, when demand spikes and supply can't always keep pace fast enough. I noticed this myself heading into the holiday baking season last year. My usual butter was more expensive than I expected, and a few store brands were actually sold out entirely for a few days. Butter freezes extremely well, so buying a few extra boxes when it's on sale, especially outside of major holidays, is a simple way to avoid paying peak season prices later. This is a small habit that a lot of experienced home bakers already use, and it's worth adopting if you go through butter regularly. Item number 9. Canned goods. This one is less about a single food and more about the container it comes in. Aluminum and steel tariffs have pushed up the cost of packaging for a wide range of canned goods, from vegetables to soup to canned fruit. The food inside hasn't necessarily gotten more expensive to produce, but the can itself costs more to make. Manufacturers have been passing that packaging cost down the line, which means even basic pantry staples like canned beans and canned tomatoes have crept up in price over recent months. I actually compared prices on a few canned items I buy regularly, and the increase was small per can, but it added up once I looked at my full pantry haul for the month. If you rely on canned goods for quick meals, buying in bulk during sales and stocking a deep pantry shelf is a smart way to buy ahead of further packaging cost increases. This is one of those changes that's easy to miss because it happens a few cents at a time, item by item, until your total at checkout just feels higher than it used to. Item number 10. Rice is a staple in a huge number of households, and global rice pricing has been more volatile than most people realize. Export restrictions from major rice-producing countries, combined with weather disruptions to harvests in parts of Asia, have tightened global supply at different points over the past couple of years. That volatility eventually reaches domestic shelves. Even though the United States grows a significant amount of its own rice, pricing is still influenced by global markets, especially for specialty varieties like basmati and jasmine rice. When I went to restock my pantry a while back, I noticed the bulk bag of rice I usually buy had gone up more than I expected for something that felt like it should be a stable, boring staple. Rice stores incredibly well for long periods if kept dry and sealed, so buying a larger bag during a sale is one of the easier ways to lock in a lower price for months at a time. This is a good reminder that even the most basic pantry items aren't immune to global supply shifts. Item number 11. Seafood, especially shrimp. Seafood has been getting quietly more expensive, and shrimp in particular has become a good example of how trade policy shows up in your grocery cart. A large share of shrimp sold in the US is imported, and tariffs along with shipping cost changes have pushed prices up at both grocery stores and restaurants. Industry reporting has pointed to tighter margins for importers, which usually means the cost eventually gets passed to the consumer rather than absorbed indefinitely. I remember planning a shrimp dinner for a get-together and being surprised at how much more the bag cost compared to the last time I bought it, just a few months earlier. Frozen shrimp holds up well, so buying a larger bag when you see a fair price and keeping it in the freezer is a simple way to avoid paying a premium every single time you want it. Seafood is one of those categories where the price swings can happen fast, so it pays to stock up when you spot a reasonable deal rather than waiting. Item number 12. Maple syrup. This one feels almost old-fashioned, but it's a real example of a weather-sensitive product with a very limited supply region. Most maple syrup comes from a relatively small band of forest across the northeastern US and parts of Canada, and the sap harvest depends heavily on very specific temperature swings in late winter. Warmer winters have shortened and disrupted the sap season in various recent years. When the harvest season is shorter or less productive, supply tightens, and pure maple syrup prices reflect that scarcity directly since there's no easy substitute at scale. I picked up a bottle for a family breakfast a while back and was genuinely surprised at the price difference compared to what I remembered paying not that long ago. If you use real maple syrup regularly, buying a larger bottle when you see a good price is worth it, since it keeps for a long time once opened and refrigerated. This is a small luxury for a lot of households, and it's becoming a more noticeable line item than it used to be. Item number 13. Frozen vegetables. Frozen vegetables are usually seen as the budget-friendly option, which makes their recent price movement worth paying attention to. Rising costs for growing, processing, and cold storage transportation have all pushed frozen vegetable prices up gradually. It's not one dramatic jump, but a steady climb that's easy to miss if you're not comparing prices month to month. Retail pricing trackers have shown frozen vegetables increasing at a pace that, in some cases, has outpaced fresh produce, which used to be the more expensive option by default. I started actually comparing my receipts a few months apart, which I never used to do, and noticed my usual bag of mixed vegetables had gone up more than I expected for something I considered a reliable, cheap staple. Buying larger bags when they're on sale, rather than smaller bags at regular price, is a straightforward way to get more value while this category keeps climbing. This is a good example of how even the cheap section of the freezer aisle isn't as immune to price pressure as people assume. Item number 14. Store brand cereal. This one might surprise you because store brands are usually the go-to move for saving money, but even they aren't fully protected anymore. Grain costs, packaging costs, and processing costs have all risen together. And while store brand cereal is still cheaper than name brand, the gap has been narrowing in a lot of stores. Some private label manufacturers have quietly reduced box sizes while keeping the price the same, a pattern that's shown up across several packaged food categories recently. I compared a store brand box side by side with one I remembered from a while back, and the box was noticeably lighter, even though it looked almost identical on the shelf. Checking the weight on the box, not just the price, is a simple habit that helps you actually compare value instead of assuming the cheaper looking option is still the better deal. This is one of those quiet changes that adds up over a year of weekly grocery runs without most people ever noticing. Item number 15. Bulk Warehouse Club memberships. This last one isn't a food item, but it might be the most important thing on this entire list. As individual grocery items keep climbing, more households have been leaning on warehouse clubs like Costco and Sam's Club to buy staples in bulk and lock in a lower per unit price before the next increase hits. Industry data has shown steady growth in warehouse club memberships over the past couple of years, and a lot of that growth has been tied directly to inflation-conscious shoppers trying to stretch their budgets further. I signed up for a membership myself after doing the math on how often I was buying the same staples over and over at regular grocery prices, and it paid for itself faster than I expected. If you go through pantry staples, coffee, rice, canned goods, or frozen items regularly, running the numbers on a membership is worth it, especially with prices moving the way they have been. This is less about one purchase and more about changing how you buy, which ends up protecting your budget across almost everything else on this list. So here's the pattern behind all of this. It's rarely one dramatic headline. It's weather in one country, a tariff in another, a shrinking herd, a shrinking crop, a smaller box that looks the same on the shelf. Each item on its own feels small. Put together, they explain why your total at checkout keeps creeping up even when your cart looks the same as it did last year. The good news is, you don't have to panic about any of this. You just have to pay attention a little earlier than most people do. Buying ahead on the items that store well, watching for sales instead of waiting until you're out, and comparing prices instead of assuming things are the same, that's really all it takes. Most people will notice these changes months from now, when it's already showing up as a much bigger number on their receipt. You get to notice it now, while there's still time to plan around it. That's really what this channel is about. Not panic, not fear, just staying one step ahead of the curve while everyone else catches up later. If this was helpful, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment and let me know which item on this list surprised you the most. And like this video if you want to see more of these breakdowns before the news catches on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.